So the United States has vetoed for the third time a ceasefire resolution at the United Nations Security Council, coming to the aid and defense of its longtime friend and ally Israel. But there are growing concerns about a potential, if not imminent, invasion of Rafah, the southernmost city in the Gaza Strip, which is already housing more than 1 million plus Palestinian refugees. Israel says it is the last remaining center of gravity for Hamas, and it is insisting that it will go in and invade Rafah. Joining me now is one of the most famous, credible and renowned Israeli journalists and authors. Gideon Levy is now joining me. Thank you very much, Mr. Levy, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Let me start off by asking you, what is the ground situation as the Israel-Hamas war, as it stands today? It's been over 4 months since this war began. There's a huge amount of concern about this imminent ground operation in Rafah. And everyone from the United States to other countries around the world, even the United Nations Security Council, has expressed deep concerns about the Israeli army going into Rafah without any kind of mechanism to evacuate the 1 million plus civilians who are already seeking refuge there. What is your best understanding of why the Israeli government isn't really paying heed to these global concerns?
Yeah, I think that until now, Israel suggested the idea of conquering Rafah as a way, as a leverage to put pressure on Hamas. I'm not sure that the decision was taken already, but it might happen, and quite soon. And then it might become into a bloodbath that we didn't see yet in Gaza, because 1.3, 1.4 million refugees who are right now in Rafah have nowhere to go. We have to understand it, especially in a huge country like yours. Gaza is tiny. Gaza is totally destroyed now, and there is no safe place in Gaza anymore, and there is no place to move 1.4 million people. It's just impossible. And I hope that the world will stop Israel of doing it. Right now, we are all waiting to see.
But that's exactly what is not happening, because Israel's biggest friends and allies are preventing that from happening. As we saw at the United Nations Security Council a couple of nights ago, the United States vetoed for a third time a resolution that called for an immediate ceasefire. Why do you think the U.S. is doing this? It's almost seeming like it's going out on a limb to protect Israel, despite global opinion being stacked up against Israel and against this imminent sort of conquest or invasion of Rafah. Why is the U.S. doing that?
Let me be very clear. The United States is just paying a lip service, nothing but this. The United States stands behind this war from its beginning, supports it, finances it, and arms Israel. On the day that they were complaining in the White House about too many civilians killed in Gaza, on this very same day, the United States sent more ammunition to Israel and more arms to Israel. So what is the message? The message is you can go on as much as you want. If the United States would have liked to see this war ended, it would have ended long time ago.
But why do you think that is? Because we also simultaneously keep hearing these reports that domestically there's pressure on President Biden. This is an election year, and a large number of younger Democrats are appalled by this war and what they see as a lack of action by the Biden administration. We saw a part of that play out on college campuses a few months ago in America. And yet this war is still going on, seemingly with no end in the foreseeable future. So why isn't the most powerful country in the world doing more to stop Israel and to stop this war? Eventually, it has to lead to some form of culmination.
I think it has a lot to do with the personality of President Biden, who is maybe the last Zionist president in Washington. I think emotionally he's very involved about Israel for many, many years, even though he is criticized here in a way that he doesn't deserve. But in any case, it's also about interests of the United States. The United States want Israel to crush Hamas, no doubt about it. Many countries want to see Hamas being crushed, because this means all kinds of consequences if Hamas gets stronger now. Not only regional, even more than this. But by the end of the day, the United States is paying a lip service to the progressive circles in the Democratic Party and acting exactly on the opposite side. It's not the first time that the United States is doing so. The United States is doing the same about more bigger, wider regional questions like ending the occupation. The United States says for decades that it wants the occupation to come to its end, and in the same time, it is financing it and arming the Israeli army.
So we've talked about Joe Biden. What about Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister? How is he managing to hold on to power, despite the fact that there is clearly domestic protests against him virtually every single day? Politically, his coalition is in a precarious position even before this war began. But now there is also the mounting pressure because of increasing civilian casualties. And to my mind, Netanyahu's biggest calling card as a politician was that he had the strongman image. He appealed to a large section of the right or right of center of Israeli politics. He was the man who was the tough guy against Hamas. All of that took a huge beating on the 7th of October. And here we are, 4 months on, he's still very much there. Why?
Yes, as long as there are no elections and Netanyahu will do anything possible to prevent elections, he will stay in power. The polls are terrible for him, and they don't promise him anything. And above all, continuing the war is continuing his term. And therefore, so many people are suspicious about his real intentions. Does he really want to continue this war only for his personal survival? It's a question which I don't have the answer because I don't know exactly what motivates him. But in any case, there is a heavy suspicion because once this war is over, the career of Mr. Netanyahu will be over as well.
What about pressure from opposition figures, whether it's Mr. Benny Gantz, Mr. Yair Lapid? Is there no pressure from the opposition on Netanyahu? There's also the factor that even after 4 months of this war, there are still 100+ Israeli hostages who are still in Hamas captivity. Isn't that adding to the pressure on Netanyahu to quit?
First of all, the big part of the opposition is in the government now. Gantz and his party, which is now in the polls the biggest party, they are in the government and they are cooperating and collaborating with Netanyahu. And don't be wrong, they support the continuance of this war. From the outside, many times people think that if Israel will only get rid of Netanyahu, Israel will change dramatically and for the good. It's not the case, because the alternative, like Gantz and Lapid, will not offer a dramatic change for Israel. They all support continuing the occupation. They all are rejecting a Palestinian state. So don't have too high expectations.
All right. My last couple of questions, Mr. Levy. First, the more immediate term in the foreseeable future, how do you see this war ending?
I don't see it ending. That's the truth. I don't see it happening as long as the international community doesn't force Israel to put an end to it. And even if it will end, it will not really end because I don't see Israel getting out of Gaza. And as long as Israel will stay inside Gaza, the war will continue in different shapes, in different ways. But there will be always violent resistance against the presence of the Israeli army in Gaza. No doubt about this. So it will change its shape. It will become more of a guerrilla war, but it will not end. And as Israel went to this war without having any plan for the day after, you can't expect now, for sure not from me, but from anyone, to see how will it end, because there is no plan how to end it.
Okay. One final question. This is a more longer-term question, the more permanent fix to this problem. And everyone from President Biden, the British Prime Minister, the French President, the German Chancellor, they're all saying that the only permanent solution is the two-state solution. But then Netanyahu has outright rejected that. So has the entire Israeli cabinet. They're saying there is no two-state solution. The only solution is a one-state solution, and that one state is the state of Israel.
Yes, and if it is the one-state solution according to this version, it means an apartheid state, no other way to describe it. Because the one-state solution that Israel is offering right now and is implementing for the last 55 years is an apartheid state. Two peoples living under one regime, one government, and one people has all the rights in the world, the other one has no rights whatsoever, including no citizenship. This is called apartheid, and there is no other way to call it. Now, about Biden and the international community, again, those are hollow declarations. What did they do to implement the two-state solutions throughout the years, except of supporting Israel? So the day that the international community, led by the United States, will decide that it wants a new reality in the Middle East, it should accompany it with taking measures and not only spreading declarations.
All right. Mr. Gideon Levy, thank you very much for joining us with your thoughts and perspective.
Thank you for having me.